Hello, welcome to Sightline. Today we will talk about Mongolians living abroad with our guest, Mr. Munkhdul. He is a board member of Council of Mongolians Abroad. Hello.
Hello.
Could you please tell us about this event? What do you organize here in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
Today we are celebrating our 5th anniversary of our council. Our council was established exactly 5 years ago with the initiative of the foreign minister at the time. Our council is an umbrella organization of different kinds of organizations, associations, Mongolian language centers that operate abroad, that are run by Mongolians. This council was created because up until 2014, different various organizations used to approach government organizations, different international organizations by themselves. But what the foreign ministry realized was that a lot of them have similar issues and similar problems. So at the foreign minister's initiative, suggestion was that these kind of organizations get together and create an umbrella organization so that organization can collect all these issues that are facing all of the Mongolians living abroad, and that we can do a one-window policy between the Mongolian government, international organizations, and all the Mongolians living in overseas.
And how many countries it includes?
We are a voluntary organization. We don't force any organization to join us, but we can proudly say that most of the organizations that are operating abroad, most of the active ones, I should say, according to our estimation, there's around 170 or 180 of these active organizations that are operating in various countries, in 47 countries that Mongolians live in. And more than 120 or so of them are members of our council. And a lot of them are also Mongolian language centers that basically Mongolian language Sunday schools, weekend schools that are fulfilling a void that's there, which is according to our constitution, every child, every Mongolian citizen under the age of 18 is obliged or has the right to acquire basic education from the government. But sadly, of course, due to various reasons, mostly due to budget reasons, Mongolian government is not able to reach all those children living abroad. And there's around, according to the foreign ministry, there's 170,000 or so citizens living abroad.
Now, how many Mongolians live abroad?
According to the foreign ministry, there are around 170,000 Mongolians living abroad. But this number also doesn't capture a lot of the citizens who had to give up their Mongolian citizenship in order to continue living in that country. So there could be potentially more than 200,000 or maybe even 250,000 Mongolians that are living abroad.
There are some challenges about those citizenship aspect. I heard that there are a lot of trials to make it like double. And in what exactly conditions do we now?
According to our constitution, Mongolia doesn't allow dual citizenship. This creates a lot of problems, especially in countries that allow dual citizenship, especially even more so countries that allow or give citizenships to anyone who are born in that country, specifically the United States. So Mongolians living abroad, of course, due to family reasons, family expands, they give birth, and until the age of 18, these kids carry dual kind of half citizenship, and at the age of 18, they have to choose one of them. And a lot of those times, if you're already living in the United States, it's more advantageous to have a U.S. citizenship. But unfortunately, in order to continue being a U.S. citizen, they will have to give up their Mongolian citizenship.
I think it's really clear that people, especially children who live abroad, they don't know really good mother language. And is it a very big challenge for them? And how do you decide this?
Of course, I think that's perhaps the biggest concern of Mongolians who live overseas, who have families over there, who have children in those countries, is that they perhaps probably went to school here, who grew up here, who of course will never forget their Mongolian language. But if you are born in a foreign country, if you are brought to that country at a very young age, it's very easy to forget whatever language you first learned, which is parents' concern. But from Mongolia's perspective, I think this is a really issue of a national security, which is if we have close to 200,000 citizens, and a lot of them, most of them are adults, and of course, any human would love to create a family, and you will give birth, have children, create families, get married, and those children will grow up in those foreign countries.
We talked about social side of your organization. Could you please tell us about other directions and other spheres? In what spheres do you also work?
Our council is basically looks at the concerns, the general concerns of any citizen living abroad, which is, like I mentioned, there could be Mongolian language or educational side of things that we hope that the Mongolian government should provide, and they are making some steps, but we need there to be more. One other thing is that social protection issue as well, which is you're a citizen and you're at someday would love to move back to Mongolia and create a life here or recreate their life in Mongolia. But when you come back and then you reach retirement age, you've been paying Social Security or these pension premiums to a foreign country, and when you leave that country, all that money, all that investment is gone. You will not be able to receive it until you reach retirement in that country, or basically you have to go back there. And what the Mongolian government is doing is creating bilateral Social Security agreements in a way that you work a number of years there, you pay Social Security, and when you leave that country, that government basically pays them in Mongolia. That way, it could create an easier way for a lot of people to come back, which is, I think, one of the biggest reasons why they decide they can't come back, because there's nothing that they can use as investments when they retire or when they any kind of social issues that arise there. One other thing that I think our council is really pushing for this time is our election rights. In our constitution provides us with the right to vote in elections, and it doesn't mention anything about geographical location of where you are. Basically, what that means, if you're a citizen of Mongolia, you have the right to vote for any election, regardless of where you're living, and regardless, you don't have to be in Mongolia. There's been a few attempts by the Mongolian government to do that, provide that kind of opportunity, right? There's 3 elections that Mongolian citizens were able to vote for, but unfortunately, because of changes to the election law, the last parliamentary election in 2016, no citizens who are living abroad were able to vote. And this is something that needs to be fixed. If there's close to 200,000 citizens living abroad, and if you count just voting age citizens, our council did a study saying, and we found that between 8 to 12% of voting age citizens are living abroad. That's pretty significant. 1/10 of our voters are living abroad, which is a big constituency that our politicians will never care for, will never talk about, will never even have any kind of thoughts of. If we don't have that election political rights that is enshrined in our constitution. So this is something that our council has been pushing for lately.
I think it's quite complicated to work only within the frame of your council. And with what exactly organizations do you collaborate with?
From the Mongolian government side, our main counterpart is, of course, the foreign ministry. As I mentioned, our council was created at the initiative of the foreign minister at the time, and it's, of course, the foreign ministry is mandated to take care of their citizens living abroad through their consular services, and because of some of the social issues that I mentioned, like education and social protection, we also work with the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Sports,
yes.
And also the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. We also work with Mongolian National Chamber of Commerce, and various other government agencies such as the State Registration or Immigration Agency, and these are our government counterparts. But there are also a few international organizations that we also try to reach out, which is the International Organization of Migration, various other UN-related agencies that deal with these diaspora and immigration issues. I think that's a major, and they would have a lot of experience dealing with other countries that face these kind of big diaspora. Diaspora means, of course, citizens who are living abroad, not just citizens, but ethnically Mongolians, who even those ethnic Mongols who are living in other countries, who are separated by borders, these are counted as diaspora. And I think that's something that everyone should also consider as diasporas that can be tapped into. And if you look at a lot of developed countries, they smartly and rightfully use their diaspora to bring back knowledge, know-how, investment, and lobbying other foreign governments to be able to develop their countries. And I think Mongolia is slowly realizing this potential. And I think this is a very untapped source of resources that Mongolia can tap into.
That means that your council is worldwide. It's really huge and big. And it's really interesting to know where your main office is located.
Our council is an NGO. We are registered in Mongolia. I mean, we thought about where to register. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, if we want to reach out to every Mongolians, we need to be at the center of things, which is Mongolia. We are an NGO registered in Mongolia, and since 2014. And as I mentioned, this year is the 5th anniversary of our council.
Mm-hmm. And one more question about finances. How do you get them?
Purely, all of the council members, board members, and various committee members, they all work on a volunteer basis. None of us get paid. This is just out of our sense of duty, our sense of pride, our sense of patriotism, that our members and board members decided to form this organization, decided to look at their issues from a macro, not from a global perspective, and try to reach out to our government, not just to our government, but other organizations, and especially to our citizens living in Mongolia, to help bridge between these the world and Mongolia, and the Mongolians living around the world and Mongolians living in Mongolia. And some of our member organizations, we are slowly trying to come up with sustainable and financial, of course, and this is a lot of the times, I think most of the time, it came out of their pockets, or printing something, or renting an office, or buying a piece of a pen. All of these things pile up and become big expenses. But up till now, most of the time we've been from our donations from our pockets, and slowly we've been asking our board members to pitch in a little bit, and our member organizations to pitch in a little bit. Very kind of token kind of membership fees, if you will. But this will be another big issue that we will have to tackle with, and we are looking at other kind of diaspora organizations that are successfully dealt with kind of things, which would be to working with international organizations that deal with these kind of things. Perhaps this could be something that we can tap into. But for 5 years, this has been a drive or a development that came purely out of our hearts.
Well, we talked about positive side of your council. Now let's be realistic and talk about the negative part as well. What kind of challenges do Mongolians living abroad face there? Are there any criminals? Are there any, those problems that are really important?
Of course,
yes.
Of course, but you have to look at it from this side. If there's 200,000 people, you're bound to have one or two bad apples. And anyone who works in the media would know that negative news gets circulated 10, 20 times more than positive news. So this is something that I think which gets viewed so many times more than all the positive things that our Mongolians living abroad are doing.
All right, my last question. What do you expect? What outcomes do you see in the future by working with in this council?
In the last 5 years, we saw quite a big improvement, a shift in the mindset, I think, of the Mongolian government, which is that the various things that I mentioned before,
yes.
Untapped resource, and also realizing or fulfilling their duties as a state, and providing maybe not all, but some of the government services that is provided by the Constitution, right? In the next 5 years, I think we need to go a little more deeper into the government, which is go to the political side of things, which is, like I mentioned, our political right to vote for elections. This needs to be, of course, handled a little more better, a little more deeper into the government side of things, right? Which is through working closely with our legislative branch, our members of parliament. I think up till now, perhaps any kind of law that deals with Mongolian citizens, every politician, I think, never regarded or thought of it as from the side of Mongolian citizens who are living abroad. They only thought about the people living here, which is their constituency, right? Because they did not provide voting rights to people living abroad. If you can tap into those potential, work closely with our members of parliament, especially the Standing Committee on Foreign Policy and National Security, that's something that needs to be done. Also, the parliament has one of the biggest powers, which is approving the budget, right? Education. Every child in a school age is approved a certain budget, and that budget is given to that school, regardless if it's a private or a public school. And in the Constitution, like I mentioned, it doesn't designate only we'll provide a budget for kids living in Mongolia. It doesn't say anywhere anything like that in the Constitution. So now, this is why I'm saying that the next step for us would be maybe the government now is on our side. They understand and see our potential and see what their duties are. Now it's maybe go to the legislative branch, which is, I think, the next step for us in the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much, and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Today we talked with a board member of Council of Mongolians Abroad, Mr. Munkhdul. And if you have something to add or update, please contact us on MNB World. And thank you. We will see you next week. Goodbye.